again, I'm not saying he definitely wasn't a groiper. I'm saying we don't know yet. We don't have that data yet. And the fact that he's not using groiper memes, he's not using, if there were groiper memes, I would know them. This guy was was deliberately doing this for an ideological motive within this far right internet space. I would see it and instantly know exactly where it came from. And I don't know this. This is an internet culture that I do not partake of. That does not seem to be highly Nazi inflected. So again, from what we know right now, I don't think this is a groiper.
And welcome back to another edition of German, oh German, you are a language that some people speak, but not me, not yet.
Not yet.
So, yeah, also known apparently as the Charlie Kirk death hour at the moment. Anyway, that
breaking updates.
Yeah,
it's fine.
No, absolutely. This is something we wanted to make clear. This is not becoming the Charlie Kirk death hour. We are both officially very sick of talking about this guy.
Yes.
And we are not a news podcast in the sense that we are not, as we often stress, the place to come for hot off the presses news. But this does seem to be, the way the story is unfolding does seem to be interesting.
Yeah. Well, and we recorded the last one before we had any idea about anything about who the perpetrator was or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so what we realized is literally between the time that we recorded that and the time it was released, suddenly there were a whole lot more details released.
So they caught somebody, by which, they're taking a victory lap. But what actually seems to have happened is that his family turned him in after they realized, or, again, this person hasn't been given a trial, hasn't been convicted of anything.
Yeah,
Everybody
exactly
just assuming that he's the shooter at this point. I mean, again, I'm not commenting on the likelihood of that. It's not my area at all. But
right.
This young man has been arrested.
Tyler Robinson.
Tyler Robinson, if we're naming him, yeah. As a result of his family.
I feel like we can, we're in a place where we can name them. They're, we're not hyping the thing or anything, anyway, yeah.
And of course, that has been a massive news cycle around his arrest. And let's dive straight into this.
Sure.
Both sides are racing to claim him for the other team, so to speak, to put it crudely. People on the right, of course, immediately before he was even caught, they were declaring the shooter just somebody on the left or trans, and they seem to talk as if that's just the same thing now.
Yes, exactly.
And after this young man was caught, people on the left, by which I mean sort of left of center people on Bluesky and YouTube that I'm familiar with, which is really a very small number of people in real terms, raced to do the other thing, to claim him for the other side. And
immediately going he's a groiper, he's got to be a groiper, etc.
Yeah. Now he does, from what we know, and we have various reports now, including messages supposedly scratched onto bullets, one of which being the bullet that was fired and others being bullets that weren't fired, and other things about him. He does seem to be, at least to me, and I imagine to lots of other people, a confusing and contradictory figure.
Yes.
Daniel, what do you make of him based on what we know so far?
Well, we know he's 22 years old. He did I believe he turned himself in after he spoke to his family, his family confronted him, and he did turn himself in, but he has not been cooperating with authorities beyond, he turned himself in, but he hasn't been, from everything I'm seeing in the news, from from official statements, he's not really talking. He's just, and so everybody's just going through his social media history and such. And, apparently, interestingly, he was, he's 22 years old. He was a heavy gamer. There was an old Facebook post, I think, that his mom put up in 2013, the new gaming rig when he was, when he was 10 or whatever. And that, making commentary so that happened literally 6 months before gaming started. And so he would have been stewing in this Gamergate nonsense for basically his entire life, for his entire online life has been consumed with Gamergate. And so there is part of the issue is obviously we don't have a conversation with him, but I don't know what games he was playing and what, forum posts he was in. But Yeah, no, it does seem like he kind of grew out of this gamer culture, and I'm sure that Gamergate was a part of his formative years. I know that his family are all registered Republicans. It's Utah. Everybody's a registered Republican in Utah. Um, but he had not voted, so he didn't vote in the 2024 election. And so he was in some states you don't have to officially register with the party. Sometimes not at all, and sometimes if you vote. And apparently, if he had voted in Utah, he would have had to register as one or the other, but he didn't vote, and so we don't know which. So we don't know where he doesn't. He doesn't have a voter. He has a voter registration, but it's not. It doesn't affiliate with a party. So that much is kind of up in the air. And I think you're right. I think that there was immediate thing. I mean, before they even found the guy, there was this immediate pressure to well, this is a trans Antifa. Obviously, this is someone who hated Charlie Kirk because they're on the left, and has been reporting where the governor of Utah is coming out and saying yeah, there were clearly anti-fascist messages written on the thing, and no, it's actually a little more confusing than that. I don't know, should we talk about what was on the bullets maybe, and
I'd like to
go from there
if we can. Yeah, because you're right, the governor of Utah has stated publicly, along with saying that he's not cooperating, that he has a quote left-leaning ideology, and a lot of the media are reporting the same, and they're reporting the stuff on some of the stuff on the bullets as straightforwardly anti-fascist. They're reporting, I've read lots of things like one of the bullets apparently had written on it, "Catch this fascist" or "Fascist catch."
Yeah, that's the one that they hey fascist, catch this.
Yeah,
and that's the one that everybody is immediately. Well, of course he's got to be Antifa if he's for that.
And one of the other bullets apparently had Bella Ciao written on it. Bella Ciao is, of course, famous Italian anti-fascist song. Dates back
which
to
I did not know. Which I did not know. Actually, so no,
that dates back to partisan anti-Nazi and anti-fascist activity during the Second World War. They appropriated that song.
Right.
But apparently that's been featured in a recent Netflix television series, just in case there was any danger of things being clear about what was what. That apparently is where he might have heard about that. And of course, today's fascists, some of them anyway, online, are steeped in information about the history of fascism and anti-fascism. And so, some of them will employ anti-fascist slogans and anti-fascist memes as jokes, ironically, as smokescreens. And some of them actually don't consider themselves fascists. They consider the other people on as we would see, other people on the same fascist right, that they don't like as fascists, whereas they themselves are not. So this is not immediately as clear as it might seem to, for instance, the governor of Utah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just. I also have more comments about Spencer Cox is the name of the governor of Utah. We have other things that I'm really I can't say disappointed in, but we have more commentary on what things that he has to say about this young man and certain people he is romantically involved with. But let's do the bullet casings first. I think it's important to describe it. So one casing or one cartridge, I believe the one that was actually fired. So just I don't know if the order of them meant anything to him or whatever, but it's notices bulges. Ooh, what's this? And it's comes from furry, like an online furry kind of webcomic. I found the webcomic. Somebody had posted the webcomic that it comes from, and it's used as a troll in these online gaming communities. And so people are like, "Oh, is he a furry because he's quoting this this comic?" And it's like, don't think so, because basically what these irony poisoned, internet poisoned kids do is they just use these memes. They use these things as in jokes between each other, Can
I just read you the headline that the New York Post had referring to that?
Absolutely.
The real quote, New York Post headline, "The real meaning behind trans sex furry meme on rifle round that killed Charlie Kirk." So you can see what they're going for in the way they're reporting this.
Yes. The very, very respectful New York Post. I say that with great irony. The thing is, and this is I think the thing that we just have to get from this And if you like learn anything from this, then you need to implore your news services to hire internet culture experts, people who are in these like realms, people who know this stuff,
or just some journalists. That would be a start.
Well, journal. Well, so the New York Post is particularly bad on that, but I mean, it is like 5-year-olds who like use email at work and never go on the internet otherwise, who are like trying to interpret these things. Like, well, I googled this and it's like from this furry thing,
Yeah.
and like, I mean, you could be a decent like person and like make that mistake because like this is deeply irony poisoned internet culture, and actually having somebody on your staff who's just a regular, well-paid member of staff who can cover these things for you and who understands how this shit works, that's going to mean that suddenly you can actually deal with these topics in a realistic manner. And maybe, I think that's important. I think that's something that we've learned is that, who never go online do not understand how to interpret this stuff. I mean, I'm not in this world. I rely on other people who are more deeply in this world to understand it. I'm obviously highly internet poisoned. I've been on the internet every day since I was 15 years old. But I was born in the dark. But I mean, just the reporting has been really disgusting on this, and I think partly it's like the New York Post. It's just they're just looking to smear furries and trans people.
Yeah.
And a lot of even the more responsible, sober reporting, doesn't understand it because they just don't understand it. So, I mean, there's like, well, it seems to be a reference to this. I mean, one of the other casings said, up arrow, right arrow, and 3 down arrow symbols. And that gets reported as, oh, that's an anti-fascist symbol because it's got the 3 arrows.
Uh-huh.
It's like,
it's also been reported as a trans symbol. People have been repeating a sort of a transgender symbol that they found somewhere online where, you have the circle and you have one arrow pointing up and like a riff on the old symbols for male and female. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I've seen that kind of stuff before. No, this is a very specific meme from the game Helldivers 2. I've never played any of the Helldivers games. I don't know what, it's apparently like a bomb launch sequence. Again, it's internet meme. It's something that these kids in their Discord chats, they just trade this stuff back and forth all day long. It's just an internet meme. And it's something that like the 18-year-old who's in that chat who thinks it's funny when like the grown-ups don't understand this stuff. So I would argue, based on what we know right now, I'm arguing he's performing for that crowd in the same way that the Christchurch killer and the Buffalo shooter, etc., were performing for their audiences. Now that was a much more like directly politically engaged, whereas I think this seems to be more just for the memes and just for the fun of it, and was less like kind of directly ideologically motivated. From what I understand at this point, I could be mistaken on this. But the other ones, the Hey Fascist catch is apparently making fun of Kirk for being a fascist or not being fascist enough. It could go either way, and then of course you mentioned the Bella Ciao thing, which was quoted in the it appears in the Netflix series Money Heist, which apparently it's like a big Netflix original. It's originally in Spanish, so I'm planning to watch Money Heist in the original language pretty soon. I just haven't gotten started on it yet, but so yeah, that's what that's of all the ideology that we get from this kid, from this man, from 22. I don't know, I'll call him a kid. I don't mean that to demean him or to, some innocent or whatever. It's just for everything we know from this guy. That's all the politics we have from him, basically, except for, he fought with his family sometimes about politics. But again, that could go either way. He could be like a Nick Fuentes fan. He could be an anti-fascist, and he's arguing with his normally conservative Utahn parents. Who knows? I mean, At this point, we can't know. We cannot answer this question of,
no.
What is his ideology?
There are some photographs of him apparently wearing a sort of riding around a Donald Trump costume one Halloween. Yes. And the
but
Donald
that was
Trump,
like in 2017 or something when he was, a child. I don't know, at least he was 14 or something at that point. And Trump would have been recently elected. It would have been his first year in office, and Halloween would be, kind of shortly after Unite the Right, kind of, like a month or 6 weeks after Unite the Right. I don't know. Like, it's just like he wore a Donald Trump costume. And that, again, that could be interpreted either way. We don't have like a directional like thing for this. It's like, is he mocking Donald Trump? Does he just think Donald Trump is funny because he's 14 and Donald Trump is kind of hilarious? If you're a 14-year-old irony poison teenager, again, we don't have the data on this. And the family isn't really talking. Um, I did see, interestingly, and I don't have this link in front of me, so I'll have to send it to you. You can put it in the show notes. But he was chatting with his Discord after the shooting, because he was in that like Discord chat, and he shot Charlie Kirk, and then was memeing with them, and like he didn't tell them. He was like, it's like somebody posted in the things like, God, that looks a lot like Tyler, doesn't it? And it's like, oh, must be my doppelganger. Ooh, you know, like that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And kept kind of commenting about the shooting and just kind of joking around with his buddies, never saying he did it, but then like he had knowledge that sounded like he knew more than cops did. And I think part of the reason that he got, and apparently some of these people were people that knew him in real life, like old like childhood friends of his that have just stayed in the Discord chat together, but we have no idea who all those people are. The Discord is not like disclosed, those handles, and so we can't like kind of figure anything out about it. But like oftentimes these online Discord chats will have people from all over the world. I'm in a couple of Discord chats, and it's literally people from all over the freaking planet. So I mean, this is not, it's not unusual. This is very, I don't know, it's very ordinary 22-year-old who likes video game stuff, and it's just hard to um make a direct like ideological comparison here. I mean, obviously he shot someone who was very active in politics. He also shot someone who is very well known to go to college campuses and debate people. And like all of his peers would have known who Charlie Kirk is, because at least he did drop out of college, but he was there for a while, and he may have been to Charlie Kirk events before this one. I mean, who knows?
The fact that he spent one semester at college is what the right immediately leapt upon. Dinesh D'Souza was on that like a fly on a turd. Which of his professors radicalized him? Several of them have been doing that, as if I think he was like a technical vocational student or something, and he did one.
It was like
one semester at a college in Utah. I don't imagine he was exposed to much, critical race theory in that time. Actually, the other thing that's been reported is that he apparently has or had a trans roommate. And some people have been reporting this as
is important. Yes,
him being in a relationship with this person. I don't actually know if this person is trans. I don't know if they're a trans woman or a trans man. I've seen it both ways in what I've seen, because of course some of these people are probably misgendering this person. Apparently Spencer Cox has confirmed this, for whatever that's worth. And Tyler has been reported as saying that he hates Charlie Kirk because he spreads hate. So you can see a possible narrative starting to emerge there.
Yeah, so I have an article here from the Daily Beast. My understanding is that it was a trans woman,
right,
that it is his roommate, and that they are romantically involved. I believe that the hold on, give me just a second here.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say was that this does strike me as opportunistic, in the sense, the only reason Kennedy gets shot by Oswald is because Kennedy happens to be driven past the warehouse where Oswald happens, this particular guy who's ready to do something. He happens to be working there. And here you have apparently a young man sort of in a similar sort of situation, ready to do something. And this guy, Charlie Kirk, happens to turn up at the college that's near where he lives. I think if that event hadn't been, it's me speculating, obviously, but I strongly suspect that if this event just hadn't happened to be scheduled in that particular place, none of this would have happened.
Yeah.
Which does tend to sort of run against the idea of this being a particular obsessive grudge. But again, we do not know.
Okay, so from what I understand, it seems to be true. The problem is that like a lot of the reporting is kind of going through the Spencer Cox fellow.
Mm-hmm.
And I was under the impression that some of that had been confirmed independently, but now I cannot find that reference. So I'm going to delay making a direct statement on this. But from reporting that seems solid, but that may be coming out of the Spencer Cox's rancid little asshole on this topic. I believe that it is true that that Tyler Robinson was dating his roommate and that it is a trans woman. And Spencer Cox claims to have been in communication with this person. They have not named this person because they're not involved with the shooting or anything. They had no idea about it. Apparently, they were horrified when they found out. As as romantic partners, found this. Marina Oswald was horrified when she found out what Lee Harvey Oswald had done, and then spent the rest of her life pretending it was a conspiracy. You gotta love that. Yeah. So
again, in the movie, she knows it's a conspiracy, and then the Warren Commission convince her that it wasn't. The reality, the exact opposite. But we're not doing that again.
Yes. We're not doing that again. We can't get away from JFK, man. It's a high-powered rifle, so therefore we just have to talk about JFK. Anyway, no, this is being used. This is the thing that's like really disgusting. Is that at first, before we knew anything about this kid, before we knew anything about anything, we had no identification. They were finding like 70-year-olds and thinking that was the shooter because that was the first thing that was reported as a person of interest.
Yeah.
And so immediately within minutes, within hours, it's got to be a trans person. They would use the T slur. I'm not going to use the T slur, obviously, but it's
Nancy Mace used that all over the statement.
It's got to be first. It has the shooter has to be trans because all mass shooters are trans now. They just decided that all mass.
That's right. In their alternate reality that they've chosen to live in, all mass shooters are trans now. That's just something they know. That's just a fact.
Because there have been a couple of mass shooters who happen to be trans. Because trans people are people, and some of them do despicable things. Which in case we did not, this was a despicable thing to do. I'm not. We're not fans of this. At the same time, so at first it was, well, it's obviously got to be a trans person. And then when they kind of get photos of the guy and it's like, it doesn't look trans to me, obviously sometimes you can't tell. It was like, but it looks like a dopey little white kid, and then it becomes, well, it's trans ideology because, look, we've misinterpreted these things that are on the bullet casings. And so it's got to be a trans ideology now. And then when that doesn't seem to be true, suddenly they're retreating again. And like, well, no, it's his trans roommate has infected his brain and made him like do transy shootings. So it's still based on and so the common denominator here is, hey, it is not surprising to me that a 22-year-old was whether it's romantic or whether it's just a roommate situation, a whole lot of people in their late 20s are playing with their gender these days, whether they remain trans or whether they transition back. This is not a judgment. This is a judgment-free zone on all of that stuff, but a whole lot of 20-somethings play around with their gender these days. This is not unusual for a 22-year-old to be friendly, emotionally invested in the life of a trans person. That is not, and there's no indication whatsoever. And again, if we find out, then I will be happy to discuss this further. But there's no reason at this point to think this has anything to do with the reason for the shooting. That he was romantically involved, possibly with his roommate who was trans. He shoots Charlie Kirk, who hated trans people. Now, maybe there's some there. No, we cannot comment on this because we don't have a motive yet. We just don't know. I'm guessing if he was trying to do this for his, partner, there would have been a more explicit statement to that effect. That would be my guess. Is it would be trans rights bitch or something like that. They would have written on the casings.
Yeah.
The fact that it's not indicates that is not the reason for this to me. But again, we don't know. I could be wrong. I have been wrong before, but I don't know. I find this whole thing just, I find like the killing is one thing. The way that the kind of the right wing is responding to it, but like supposedly responsible journalistic outfits, just drinking the sewage that Spencer Cox is saying hook, line, and sinker, and pretending that he has any particular insight into this because they don't have any information except for what he's feeding them. Like, like a baby bird, their baby birds taking this regurgitated crap. And I don't trust it at all because Spencer Cox very clearly has an agenda here. He wants this to be about trans people. And the entire right-wing media and a whole lot of the mainstream media are kind of running with that. And it's just, the absolute, this is Charlie Kirk won that day because, suddenly the entire government apparatus that he spent a lot of hours, many, many hours trying to push it against trans people is now being even more pushed against trans people. And there's no evidence that this kid had any kind of particular inclinations one way or another towards trans people, except if he's friendly and romantically involved with them. Look, there are Nazis who are friends with trans people. Like there were members of Atomwaffen Division. So I feel like we've kind of been answering questions. did get some questions on the internet. And I guess we should start with David Gerard, friend of the show, one of our very first fans.
Yeah.
I think he may have been like in our first like 5 listeners or something like that. You know, he was a fan of the show before it was a show. I think it's kind of the way it worked. So he sent us first of all, he sent me a reply on Bluesky, and then very helpfully recorded it for us.
They all quack like ducks, but fine delineations between the various varieties of mallard we see in this discussion and the wing feathers. I mean, e.g., how groypers thought dude was a groyper, even if he's technically another variety, which, fuck's sake, keeping up with these fucks. Ah! Yep, that's a question, I think.
And obviously that is intentionally, obfuscatory. But I think the intent is there is like, so who the fuck was this kid? Was this ideological or not? And I think the honest answer, I think we've been answering the whole episode, and that's kind of the thing that's on everybody's mind is, to my mind, this does not strike me as overtly ideological. I could be wrong. I don't think that saying this kid, that the Groyper Wars happened in 2019, and therefore this guy was a Groyper. That was 6 years ago. This kid is 22. He would have been 16 or so then.
Yeah.
Probably not like, I mean, maybe hanging out in Nick Fuentes. I mean, Nick Fuentes is just a big figure for a lot of these online figures. I'm sure he knew who Nick Fuentes was, whether he's like an acolyte of Nick Fuentes.
Well,
that seems less likely to me.
Yeah, this is it. It's not an either or. It's not like, he is or he isn't a groyper. It's not an on or off switch. And if he's not a groyper, then there's no influence. There's no association at all. He could have heard of Nick Fuentes. He could be partly, familiar with some of this stuff without being, technically, whatever that would even mean, a groyper.
Yeah. I mean, again,
it's not like they have membership cards,
Well, I think some of them do, but
they do. Okay,
this is. I think the inner circle. I mean, there are like Fuentes has this little hierarchy of people. I mean, if you're working with him, if you're like going to his events and stuff, I mean, it's small. It's not. But like Nick Fuentes has enormous reach among people of that age and among that world. That's one of the problems of Nick Fuentes, just having that kind of reach. I mean, it's like, it's like if it was the 90s, it's like, well, he watched Friends, and so clearly, he shot it because Chandler being told him so. It's like, no, that's not how this works. You being familiar with Fuentes does not mean that he's like a descendant of the Groyper Wars. And again, in the Sherlock Holmes sense of the dog that didn't bark, we can look at what isn't on the show casings. Like, he doesn't say Jew lover, for instance. He's not doing straight Nick Fuentes memes. He's not. These are internet poisoned. Like, I mean, and like, he only has like, some of the other shooters have had, like many, like, like they draw like the way Brenton Tarrant like drew on his rifle within the white marker and stuff, and they draw all these kinds of, and some of them are just incoherent because it's incoherence. It's all just like backing. It's just being against the system in whatever way, and so they just use it to do the thing. The fact that this is like, one shot, one kill, this was not a mass shooting. He brought for, if this was intended to be a mass shooting and just like creating chaos, that would have been a very different kind of incident in my mind. Again, I'm not an expert on this, on that kind of criminology, but this does not feel like, the Christchurch massacre. It's a very different kind of thing. But I think going out in the world and wanting to see, wanting to do violence in the name of like seeing people scatter, I think that was probably a big part of the motive here. And again, we don't know, but we can infer from facts. And again, if it had Jew lover written on the side of these casings, you go, yeah, okay, well that's a fascist. If you didn't have death to Israel, I mean, of course they'd read that as a left-wing thing. Oh, it's just generic anti-Semitism, but again, it's so internet poison, it's so irony poisoned that you cannot make a direct ideological meaning out of this whatsoever. And I think that's the real answer is, we don't know enough yet. And what we do know from what previous people have done this sort of thing. So, again, I don't know. Is that clear? I think it's pretty obvious at this point.
I think it's as clear as it can be, given the lack of clarity that reality is presenting us with at this point.
Yes. And in a week or two we will know more, and maybe we're not going to revisit this every 4 days, but like we'll obviously be discussing this as we know more. We're just trying to update you, just because like I think the real thing is we just find A lot of the reporting on this and a lot of the online, on all sides, look, left and
Yes.
right, they're, the blue sky people going, well, this is clearly a groiper. I would like to believe that too. It would be very nice and comfortable for me to just say, he's a fan of Nick Fuentes, fuck Nick Fuentes, take Nick Fuentes off the internet, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm honest and I have to respond with what I see.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying he definitely wasn't a groiper. I'm saying we don't know yet. We don't have that data yet. And the fact that he's not using groiper memes, he's not using, if there were groiper memes, I would know them. If this guy was was deliberately doing this for an ideological motive within this far right internet space, I would see it and instantly know exactly where it came from. And I don't know this. This is an internet culture that I do not partake of. That does not seem to be highly Nazi inflected. So again, from what we know right now, I don't think this is a groiper, but we may, and if we do find out more, I will crow on that. But I'm telling you now, do not just start blaming Nick Fuentes for this. Blame Nick Fuentes for the things Nick Fuentes actually did, and actually does every day. Blame him for the real shit. Don't blame him for this. There's no evidence yet. So let's be a little bit more honest about that. And again, I've only seen it in a couple of places. This is not like a regular thing, but I have seen people kind of jump into that conclusion, and I want to just say we cannot jump to that conclusion yet. It's just not. It is not based on facts and evidence, as they used to say on Law and Order all the time. Conclusion not based on facts and evidence. So that's just the case. All right, we should answer. We had a couple more kind of comments. Jumping through those real quick. We did have somebody, and I'm just going to highlight this. I'm going to put these two links that this person provided. So it's not really a question, just something you might miss, and that shows how the Christo-fascist far right is truly international. A Czech cardinal will be holding a mass for Charlie Kirk, and then there's a link to a xfest.cz domain name, and apparently the Slovakian prime minister, and of course Orban in Hungary is kind of also like singing the praises of Charlie Kirk, and that's, I don't track far right politics in Europe and in the rest of the world. That's Craig Johnson, that's his speed. We let Craig Johnson do that, and I focus here. Love you, Craig. That's not a dig at Craig Johnson, of course. It's incredibly important work. But no, I'm not unaware of that. Yes, no, it is very clear to me that it became, and I think what kind of more mainstream right wing sources, what really happened here in the media on Fox News, it's and Megyn Kelly and those kinds of people, is Kirk isn't a person anymore. He's a symbol. It's this thing they're using to you see this a lot, and this is why I was really pushing in the last Charlie Kirk episode against this idea that he was just a reasoned debate. He would just like to spar with people. He liked to really get in the ideas, and he was just asking questions and no, he was producing far right propaganda, racist, Islamophobic propaganda. When we covered that in a lot of detail, and we can cover it in a lot more detail. I went light on the guy. Believe me, it would be simple. And I've seen a lot of stuff in the last 2 days where people went a lot further than I did on that. I was deliberately trying to hold back just to go look, we could tell you how bad this guy was just from one episode of this podcast. We do not have to go looking for stuff to find horrifying things.
And that's
we
really
can just listen to a little bit.
That has really struck people. I think I've seen several things where people have posted about that last episode we did, where people have reacted very strongly to the fact that literally what you did was you played people the last thing he said on his last ever podcast. And I think it has struck people. Yeah. He didn't know that was going to be his last show. That was just business as usual. No. That was just Tuesday for him or whatever day it was, and that's what he went out doing. That has struck a chord with listeners, I think.
Well, please share it widely.
Speaking of, the way it's been received abroad, I can tell you the British media have really latched onto this. The Daily Mail, I mean, this is no surprise really, but at the same time, it kind of is a surprise that this relatively obscure figure that most Americans really probably hadn't heard of, let alone most British people. Daily Mail are running with this. They're doing, effectively our sort of British, in a more polite, slightly more polite accent. They're doing the New York Post's narrative, the anti-trans hysteria thing. The BBC did they got a documentary up about Charlie Kirk and the assassination up almost the same day. Really disproportionate to the direct relevance that this has in this country.
Just one more comment from Bluesky, which is again kind of more of a comment than a question, and part of what we've already answered it. But this is somebody who also asked a question for the main episode, for the one that we did most recently. He said, I don't know the gender, I don't know the gender of this person, and we will keep them anonymous. Appreciated that I kept them anonymous the first time. Said, maybe enjoyed isn't the word, but I enjoyed last week's Charlie Kirk episode. Thanks for quoting my question, by the way, and keeping me and Anonymous thoughtful. As a follow-up, what do you think the truth is? Read the assassin's political leanings, and what will the right do about that now that they can't say trans lefty? Well, they're just going to keep saying trans lefty. Like, that's just the truth.
They will just keep saying it. Yeah. Whatever the truth turns out.
I think, God, I feel like we're doing this. We're doing the same episode again. But the Butler, Pennsylvania, the guy, the kid that shot Trump, they just used the word, they tried to kill him. They just a ill-defined they. And that's, it's just going to be, well, obviously it was a trans killer because, the fact that it isn't, the fact that it doesn't appear to be, and the fact that there is no evidence for that, they just believe it now. And so they're just going to continue to believe it, regardless of what you say about it. They already have it programmed into their brains that every bad thing that happens to them is because of a trans lefty person. And therefore, it's just, they said it, Trump said it, people believe it, that's the end of it. So it's disgusting that that's true. It's disgusting that that's true, but it is true. What Charlie Kirk did during his life and what is now being done in his name against trans, it's the vilest fucking thing. It really is. These are just ordinary people trying to live their lives authentically, and they're everything wrong in the world just gets heaped upon trans people right now. It is, in the way, and let's not mince words here, in the way that using that word about Jews was in 1920s and 30s Germany. It's exactly that bad. And my heart literally breaks. Charlie Kirk didn't believe in empathy. He had quotes that, like, empathy is a sin, or empathy is a weakness, or whatever. Yeah. I do not believe that. I have empathy.
A Christian, and a self-professed Christian, said, empathy's this new wishy-washy woke invention. We don't need any of that.
We went so light on Charlie Kirk. It's just, sorry, we laugh to not cry, but I really, I cannot state how strongly enough how vile I find this rhetoric, and it is not going to stop. It is only going to get worse. So, in more responsible sections of the right, they will correct that record. You would find, in some places they will, but not on the MAGA right. Not fans of Charlie Kirk. Not like diehard fans of Donald Trump. The Bill Crystals of the world, they will understand that it's not true. David French will understand. Very, very sober, thoughtful conservatives on the New York Times will acknowledge that there's no. But those people
with no influence on the right at all. In other words,
people with no influence on the right anymore. Yeah. No, it's Charlie Kirk had 1 billion times the influence that these people had. These people are like cucks. Well, in this modern.
This is something I wanted to mention. Actually, somebody on Bluesky had a good post about this. They said Charlie Kirk was very influential. The media keep talking about how influential he was on young people. They keep talking about, he helped get Trump elected because he helped shift, the young vote, which means the young white men vote. True, but he was far more influential on the Republican Party, on Republican politicians, that and movement conservatives. That's where he was influential. So all these people that are just finding out who he was, he was a fanatical partisan for the far right version of quote unquote conservatism, MAGA and Trump and all that stuff. And his influence was on that party. So the fact that, he played a huge role. He wasn't the biggest factor or the only factor. I'm not saying that, obviously, but he played a huge role. He was one of the people that played a huge role in the MAGA takeover of the Republican Party. So, if you're looking at America today and you think everything is literally crazy, everything is insane, the economy is being driven into the off a cliff, and all these things that are, ICE agents on the streets, literally killing people, by the way, regardless of everybody's lovely pious declarations that political violence has no place in America. ICE are now killing guys, on the streets because they got a parking ticket 12 years ago. If that worries you, Charlie Kirk, he played a very large role in that happening.
He was cheering that on. He was cheering it on as a media personality and helped make it happen
politically.
through his through his influence in the Republican Party. He is not solely responsible for this. Of course, it is not. Charlie Kirk was not secretly pulling the strings, but he was highly influential. I mean, I don't know. When you tell like normies, it's like, oh, he had a family and he has children, and isn't his wife going to be sad? We'll talk about his wife in a second.
Oh yeah.
I just feel for the family. And it's like Charlie Kirk was on a personal like text chat, like a group chat with like Donald Trump's kids and like JD Vance. They were like that's who he considers friends.
Yeah.
And Peter Thiel, and well, he was paid by Peter Thiel as well. But like I'm sure he's in a lot of group chats. But I mean, like we know because he would talk about, oh yeah, I got a chat from from JD Vance. I was asking JD Vance about it the other day, and he said this. I mean, he was very open about this. This is not secret. All right, Erica Kirk.
Erica Kirk.
I said in the last one, there's not a clear successor.
Literally has 3 Ks in her name, which is just that's entrapment. I'm sorry, that's not fair.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I mean, we'll just start online meme like Twitter, like the old school Twitter stuff. You should start, the way they do Trump, where they lowercase the T and then do uppercase the R to make it rump. You should just when you type Erica Kirk, just everything should be lowercase except for the 3 Ks. That's that's the way to get her. Yeah, clearly that's really going to make a difference.
That'll put an end to her career.
Well, I said we don't have a clear successor to Charlie Kirk, and the organization might be a little rudderless. And it's like, no, Erica Kirk is stepping up. She's very adroitly steps right into that. I'm sure she believes all the things that Charlie Kirk used to believe, and she's going to be running the organization. She's going to be doing the thing. I don't know if she's going to do the podcasting and stuff, but she made a very clear public statement that she's taking the reins and she's going to be in charge of it. And so now we know how that problem gets solved. She's gonna take control of it. The thing is, for me, it's like Erica Trump. I'm sorry, I call her Erica Trump. Erica Kirk.
Not yet.
Practically the same difference.
Give it a few years.
Oh my god. No, Barron is gonna marry an older woman. Oh god.
Well, I was thinking of
just
Donald.
Had a horrible vision. Oh well, that too.
Get rid of Melania and then a match made in heaven.
Oh my god, please. This world would be anyway. God. But no, she's gonna be taking over. And anybody who was feeling sorry for her because here's where I was going with this. She appeared on the show occasionally. I think I've heard her voice a few times, but really she's not. And Charlie Kirk's whole ideology was like women should not be leaders. It should be men who are leaders of the household men. He kind of believed women shouldn't vote. He believed that like this household vote idea, like really the men are going to be voting, but they vote as a household. And then, that's the kind of Christo-fascist Charlie Kirk was.
Mm-hmm.
And now his wife is obviously very demure, doesn't have any political opinions of her own, of course, just boasts of her husband's brilliance and just like shines in his reflected glory. No, she's going to be running Turning Point now. So maybe she wasn't as innocent as some people like to pretend she was. I didn't see as much of that as I did for the kids. I think you can legitimately feel, I mean, it sucks to lose your father when you're like single digit. That sucks. I don't wish that on anybody. And they're too young to know any better. But Erica Kirk knows better. She knew exactly who her husband was. And obviously she's fine with it because she's going to just take the reins of the organization. And I highly doubt this is now going to be electing Democratic socialists, because suddenly Erica Kirk is in charge. No, she's going to continue with the exact same political project that her.
Well, yeah, going by the speech she made, I don't see a huge change in editorial policy on the horizon.
No, there's no great thing lost there. I did want to cover a little bit, kind of how the far right is responding to this, because I was listening to this just before we got on this call today, and I was listening to the Political Cesspool. On the Political Cesspool, we covered it in our Southern Nationalist episode. I think that was episode 8 or so. So way back early, we covered it. I listen to it every week. I've mentioned it here before. So I'm gonna play you this clip, and it kind of shows you how James Edwards of the Political Cesspool, who has been in the white nationalist movement since he was 22 years old. He volunteered for Patrick Buchanan's campaign back in 2000 when running on the Reform ticket. He starts his podcast in 2004, and it's running on AM radio ever since. He has interviewed everybody who is anybody in the white nationalist movement. I don't know that Mike Enoch. I think Mike Enoch did appear on it once, but it's a little more family friendly for like the Showa Boys, like literally everybody. He is personal friends with David Duke. Like this is a man who is much further right. Charlie Kirk was. Just to be clear, openly anti-Semitic, denies the Holocaust, the whole 9 yards. I was quoting Charlie Kirk's last tweet positively, as in, wow, Charlie Kirk really was saying the right thing here. He really appreciated it. He knows that Charlie Kirk was not as far to the right as he is, and oftentimes these guys consider Charlie Kirk a cock on these matters because he is in the pocket of Israel, in the pocket of the Jews, etc. And so they don't like Charlie Kirk for that. But when he says something on topics they like, they agree with him 100%.
Really has changed since last week when the Irina Zarutska DeCarlos Brown video went public, because that happened back in August, the 24th, the murder of Irina Zarutska, and there's a correlation to Charlie Kirk's assassination by what appears to be a radicalized left-wing transsexual. Charlie Kirk's last tweet before he was murdered on September 10th was, he said this: "If we want things to change, it's 100% necessary to politicize the senseless murder of Irina Zarutska, because it was politics that allowed a savage monster with 14 priors to be free on the streets to kill her." It's eerie to think, James, that was Charlie Kirk's last tweet.
I noticed that, Paul, and it is, and I intend, and I know you do as well, and so many others, to honor his wishes in doing exactly that, because there is a reason for doing that, not for scoring political points, but to save lives. It will save lives to talk about this, and let's talk about it.
It's about the murder of a young Ukrainian woman. She is 22 or 23 years old in Charlotte, North Carolina. Her name is Irina Zarutska. From what I understand, there's no reason to think that this young woman was not a perfectly wonderful. She was beautiful. She was a refugee from Ukraine working in a sandwich shop. Parents, when they were in interviews that they did with the FBI, they had an FBI translator because they don't speak English yet. And it's a senseless murder. It is, but because the perpetrator is a scary looking black man with a long rap sheet, and because it was a senseless murder, the right wing is just like every black person is doing this. And as we showed in that audio that I played at the end of the last episode, this is not because like this particular person is. It's all of these people. They are all savages who are not fit for human conduct, and we need to lock them up and throw away the key and execute them ideally. That was his politics. That's the man he was. And the actual white nationalists read that tweet and bravo, applause. You are getting done what we want to get done. You are engaging with our political project, because we hate these people too. We hate them just as much as you do. We just kind of don't think there are some good ones. We just want all of them to go. Whereas Charlie Kirk would be like, well, I have black friends. I have, and et cetera, but he does. He doesn't. He may, right wingers who agree with his political project, because again, there are bad black people, because black people are people, it makes sense to me. That is, again, the legacy of, that's how things are spitting out now, is because mainstream organizations, because the New York Times and Ezra Klein goes out there and says he was a debater. He was just a person interested in discussion and moving politics the right way. Because they do not. And I have seen a lot of people, especially in, there's a great piece at Boing Boing that goes through this. I'll put some good links. I'll give you a bunch of links. You can just put in the show notes. Because the mainstream organizations, because these mainstream news outlets, because they produce propaganda that is, well, Charlie Kirk he was just a debater. It's a senseless murder. He was just having a conversation. Again, you cannot speak of Charlie Kirk that way and then actually play things that he said in his day-to-day life. It's just impossible to do. And so I think it is the role of everyone who is listening to the sound of my voice, and everybody who, get this word out there, like make people actually listen to his words. This is what he actually said. This is not what mainstream outlets are pretending he said. Let's talk about what he actually believed and what he was actually advocating for. And if you're a fan of what he advocated for, that's fine. But now we're having the honest conversation. And that's a conversation I think is worth having. But pretending that Charlie Kirk was this like sainted figure who was just interested in discussion and debate, it is fucking bullshit. If you're listening to the sound of my voice, I'm sure you know it's fucking bullshit. And I just want I want that message of anything that I've ever said on this podcast, that needs to be that needs to be like number one right now. Is Charlie Kirk was a moral monster. He was not this figure that the New York Times and all these mainstream organizations and even like Fox News, et cetera, is trying to pretend he was. No, he was a disgusting, vile person with toxic politics who believed absolutely in the vilest of things, outside of like an open white nationalist. Yeah.
And it's incredibly. There's a quite a good piece at Liberal Currents. We'll put that in the links as well. I think it's incredibly telling. They're trying to package him posthumously as this lost civil rights leader. Of course, the civil rights in question being tacit. They never say this, but tacitly, what we're talking about is white civil rights, which is basically you're just saying, a crusader against anti-white racism, and we know what that means.
He literally was on record as like, I want to turn back the Equal Rights Amendment and that sort of thing. Like the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that went a little too far. Let's pull that back a little bit.
What he actually is an anti-civil rights campaigner. But it's just their version. It's just the mainstream. In 2025, American political and media mainstream is basically just recoding things that the far right, the Nazi right, was saying, a few years ago. They're just saying the same things recoded, and that just, in effect, it just becomes anti-racist is a code word for anti-white. That's what they're saying when they call Charlie Kirk a civil rights leader. That's what they're saying. And it's very telling that in all this coverage, which is trying to cast him in that way, they are, for the most part, being studious about avoiding actually repeating the pertinent of what he did actually say. Because precisely what you just said, you cannot square those two things. You cannot portray him as this inspirational civil rights leader and somebody who's doing politics the right way, engaging in the cut and thrust of debate and all that, and then actually quote him, because you immediately give the lie. They have to cover up in order to make that narrative work, what he actually was and what he was actually doing. And in the process, they cover up the effect that he has had on, them a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we are going to have to continue discussing Charlie Kirk. Hopefully, we'll not do a full another episode about this, at least not for a little while. But as we record other episodes, we will obviously kind of come in and kind of talk a little bit about what's going on. Unless some major new development happens, I think this is the last we're doing like a full Charlie Kirk episode for the foreseeable future. But the news moves fast. Who knows? By the time this is up, we might be going, well, I guess we got to record again.
Yeah.